Yes, Supercars in 2020 is going to be a lot of fun, and it's great to have you along for the ride here on Fox Sports. And speaking of fun, I found Neil Crompton. I hunted you down because we've got a new segment this year for all of our fans. Hashtag Ask Crompo, which gives all of you fans at home an opportunity to send through your questions on social media, and Neil Crompton here will answer them for you. We're going to do it with Larko as well. We'll have to hold on to our hats for that one.
I've got a couple of questions for him.
Indeed, I think a few people do. But let's kick off. Let's ask Crompo. With the first question for you, coming from Jonesy. Where are the lock lights when someone is hard on the brakes? I never know what to look for. Please explain.
Okay, a couple of the teams have got little what's described as mini dashes where the data that they get is actually part of the steering wheel assembly, and others have got it on the display behind the steering wheel. So in fact, if we go back to practice 2 earlier in the day, remember when Will Davison went off behind us right here at turn 11? So have a look as he comes out of the hairpin through this little kink at turn 10, then he locks the front left tyre right here, and have a look at the telltale signal right at the top of the wheel there, and it's telling him that the front left tyre is well and truly locked. It was like a traffic light, it was a stoplight, so the front left tyre was hurting, and that's the reason why the drivers use that. Some of them also use audio, so they actually use audio tone as well to be able to detect whether or not the front left or right tyres are squealing in the background.
Yeah, so now you know where it is. Practice 3 a little later this afternoon for Supercars. Keep your eye out for that. Okay, Toddler would like to know, what do they check when cars actually go into Parc Ferme? Good question.
Lots of things, in fact. Supercars take this very seriously because obviously making sure that the competition is as even and level as possible is very, very important to the integrity of the game. So when the cars come in, I guess primarily these days it's more about laptop engineering because they're sniffing for details. They're looking for exceedances in engine speed. They're looking for telltale signs in the data. In fact, there are people looking at the telemetry all the time. When the cars come back in after a race, they stick them on the scales. They will have a look at the bodywork on the car as well. And here are some images for you. So there's the scrutineering area for Supercars, and there are engineers, fully qualified race engineers are down there. So once upon a time, they were poachers. They're now gamekeepers, so they understand how the game is played. And so that's a front track check, which means that they're checking the total width of the car, they check the length, they make sure the wing angles are right, that the body's the right conformity. So there's a whole lot of things. In fact, it's a very, very long checklist of things. And there are random checks as well. They'll check fuel samples. Sometimes they'll even take some of the equipment away and check it back in Queensland after the event.
Yeah, it's pretty fascinating down there inside the garage. We'll try and jump down in there for you during one of those sessions. Supercars trackside's probably a good place to do that at the end of Sunday, so we might bring that to you this week. All right, Jesse would like to know, what has been your best moment in commentary? And this is a hard one because you've been calling this sport for a long time.
A little while. Would it be rude to say when you make that break for the airport after being with Mark Scaife for 3 or 4 days successively and then you finally escape? That would be rude to say that.
I can totally relate.
Look, there's been lots of them, but I think it's hard to go past the 2014 Super Cheap Auto Bathurst 1000, an extraordinary event that went on and on and on for something like 7 hours, with a break in the middle for everybody to take a breath and think about it, and then those crazy laps at the back end where Chaz ultimately got the victory. I had no voice. The whole thing was pure passion and excitement, and it was Supercars at its best.
Yeah, it really was. I don't think any of us will ever forget that particular race at Bathurst. All right, moving on. People would like to know, can you please explain the new tyre allocation? Do teams have more this year?
Yes is the short answer to that. Dunlop and Supercars have partnered for a whole bunch more tyres. So this weekend, for example, there are 40 tyres available. So all the grizzling and whinging that we typically hear after an early practice session, oh, look, Jess was a bit faster than me, but she had better tyres than me, etc., etc. That's all gone away. So good news is that everybody's got the same opportunity to put decent tyres on their car, and that's consistent throughout the year.
You cannot have too many tyres, can you, in car racing, that's for sure. All right, Rebecca would like to know then, what happens to all the used tyres after the races?
It's a good question, Rebecca. So what does happen to these, and it's varied over the years, that right at the moment, Karting Australia, a very important breeding ground for the drivers that we might ultimately see in Supercars, they've actually just recently placed an order for the old tyres, 23,000 tyres. They get recommissioned and they're used for safety all around kart tracks all around Australia. Of course, some of them are also used for ride days and other promo activities, so they well and truly get the most out of their dirty shirts, and when they finally release them, they're used for good purposes and recycled for safety.
Yeah, we love to hear that all of those things in motor racing are being recycled, that's for sure. Now, this is going to be a really tough question for you. So We want your first answer as it comes to you. Nico would like to know, what's the favourite car that you got to drive in your career? Can you narrow it down to just one?
Well, it's a funny thing. It's an emotional business full of passion, motorsport. So the car that you lost in yesterday you hate, if it turns out that you win it the next day, it's the most magnificent thing that you've ever driven.
Yeah.
But probably for sheer excitement, passion, the reason that you live for motorsport. I got to test an Indy car a few years ago.
Wow.
And that was up in Michigan and in the US. And an unbelievable thing, there it is in fact on camera, that had 45 inches of twin turbo boost, V8 twin turbo, twin cam, 32 valve Honda, 900 horsepower with very short life tyres on it. And in those days I was a little bit fitter than I might be now, and it was everything you could physically muster to drive it quick, and absolutely loved it. Just an extraordinary thing to drive.
So what was the percentage of pure excitement and pure fear?
90 fear and 10% excitement. So yeah, it was really amazing thing. And I'd been, those days driving a lot. You're in the cars all the time, and in the short gears in second, third, and even fourth, when you come out of the tight corners, that had so much acceleration, you're actually dizzy until you're acclimatised to the thing. But a magnificent opportunity. And actually, Steve Horn, the former chairman of the Supercars Commission, took the punt and let me have a drive of that car. Silly decision on Stephen's part, but great opportunity. And in fact, Penske had been there the day before with Paul Tracy. So like everybody in racing, you're looking at what times they did to see how you went. But a great thrill.
Yeah, very cool, Mr. Crompton. All right, Kate would like to know, moving on with our Ask Crompo segment, why will the new control damper make racing closer?
Because everybody's got the same one. So last year, for example, we had 3 different dampers on the cars, which means there's a lot of variation. Here, in fact, they are. So there are a couple of spring variations there. 2 big Australian companies, Petters and Supershock, have got together. Supershock are actually based here in South Australia. It's a great story. And it just means that there are fewer opportunities to mess around with the dampers. And so they've done a beautiful job of engineering these. Half the field thinks that life has got better, half the field thinks that life has got worse. We actually like that from an entertainment standpoint, but the simple answer is that everybody's got the same thing.
Yeah, and we can confirm it's going to make things very, very interesting here this weekend, but throughout the season, there's no doubt about that. Now, one final question, Crompo, and it comes from a Mark from Wyong. He'd like to know, can you get off the end of the back straight at Sandown flat out? No lift off the throttle in a Formula Holden car. That's from Mark from Wyong.
Yes, Mark from Wyong. He's a hoon. I've actually known him for a while. He's been one of those pests that hangs around racetracks. He's been hanging around since about 1984. We've called security on a couple of occasions to have him forcibly removed. But he and I were trading pole positions at Sandown one year in a Formula Holden. In those days, we had no data in the cars. You had to wait till the next lap to see the pit board to determine whether or not you may have prevailed. So it kept saying P1, P2, P1, P2, and the other idiot was the other idiot that I now share the commentary box with. So I thought foolishly that the secret to getting the pole position in that Rolt RT20 that you can see on screen there was to be able to attack the end of the back straight flat out, which was about a 280, 290 kilometre an hour tackle in top gear to see whether you get through there without lifting. The short version of a long story is you can't. So I ended up with very few assembled parts, went backwards into the Dandenong Road fence down there, fortunately, otherwise I'd probably be significantly shorter than I might otherwise be now, and came back with a steering wheel, and then Buffhead picked me up in his car and I went back on the side pod of his car.
How did you actually get back to the pit lane? He gave you a ride, did he?
Yeah, he sent me an invoice for it. It was long before Uber, but I still had to pay $20 for it.
Ah, the memories.
Yes.
We do love a little stroll down memory lane. We have quite a few of those throughout the year, I can tell you. Well, that's Ask Crompo for this round at Adelaide. Fantastic.
First and last time.
No,
Wasn't that wonderful?
No, it will not be
What
the
a
last
shame
time.
it's gone.
No.
Yes.
I can guarantee you it will not be the last time, Neil Crompton.